Welcome everyone to today's Smith in the World panel. I'm Patricia Woods, she, her, career advisor in the Lazarus Center for Career Development, and I'm joined by my co-host, Emily Beaudry, internship coordinator at the Lazarus Center. Today marks the third of 4 panels that make up the Smith in the World conference series. Today's panel is Education, Design, Archives, and Museums. All recorded panels may be found on our YouTube page in the upcoming weeks, and we will make sure to drop a link in the chat for where to register for our final panel on Friday, March 3rd, that will focus on panelists from the fields of government, law, and public policy. Whether you attended previous panels or are here for the first time today, we welcome all who have taken the time to join us, including students, faculty, staff, supervisors, colleagues, and all others. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear from these outstanding students. The Smith in the World Conference is intended to celebrate and share students off-campus experiential learning, including internships, community service, research, or study abroad. Students will offer reflections on how these experiences have impacted, enriched, and enriched their professional paths. Our panelists today will give short presentations about their summer 2022 off-campus learning experiences, focusing on their projects, the impact of the experiences that they had, and how Smith prepared them. I'm honored to introduce our panelists for today in the Education, Design, Archives, and Museums panel. They are Anna Maffa, Khamar, Sophie Jones, and Jenna Sutherland. Today's session will be recorded, so we ask the audience members, please keep your microphones muted. And we encourage you to submit questions for all our presenters using the chat tool throughout all of the presentations. Please don't be shy. We'll collect the questions and they'll be addressed after all of the presenters are finished. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our first panelist, Anna Maffa. Take it away, Anna.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Maffa. I'm a senior psychology and French double major, and I'm so excited to share my summer 2022 internship experience with all of you. Before starting, I just wanted to briefly introduce my former internship supervisor, Khamar, and former colleague, Mona Smat. I'm not sure if they're on the Zoom yet, but hopefully they will see the recording at some point. But these are 2 people who played a huge role in guiding and supporting me throughout this experience. And I'm so incredibly thrilled that they could maybe make it from Paris. So I worked with them at a school called ICS Paris, a pre-K through 12 international school with students coming from over 70 countries. And the curriculum is in English with French language classes and immersion in every grade. And I feel so lucky that I landed at this school because it provided me the opportunity to combine my interests in psychology and French and mental health. And so my role specifically at the school was to assist the student support coordinator, Mrs. Khamar, in providing academic, social, and emotional support to students, while also being involved in several other tasks around the school. Today, I'm going to highlight one aspect of the internship that certainly had the biggest impact on me and where I think and I hope I impacted the school the most. So in grades 2 through 8, I designed and facilitated several mental health and wellness workshops, with the depth and complexity of these topics increasing with each grade level. And the general structure was that I introduced myself to each class. They submitted any topics about mental health or wellness that they were interested in and curious about. And I prepared a presentation and several activities based on what they had communicated to my supervisor. This presentation will also be a bit meta because I'm including slides that I shared with them to all of you. But my goal with my supervisor was really to start a conversation for individuals and classes. And I talked a lot with them about stigma and what it felt like to talk about mental health at school for maybe their first time. And because I was at the school for such a short amount of time, really one of my goals was to brainstorm with the students how conversations like these could be continued even after I left. So these slides, grades 4 and 5, were particularly special to me because their teacher, Mrs. Smatt, really appreciated and supported the work that I did with her students. And I ended up working with her class for several weeks. I remember at the end of this workshop, one student came up to me at the end of one of the activities we had done. This activity was called Square Squad, and essentially I put a sticky note on all of their desks and I asked them to write one person in their support system or one person that they feel like they could go to in hard situations. And one student said, "Anna, you're on my sticky note." And this was an incredibly meaningful moment for me and one that I will certainly take away. So these are grade 7 slides where we talked more about what factors contribute to our mental health, and per their request, a little bit more specifically about anxiety. And I thought that this grade did a fantastic job when I asked them for examples of stressful situations and maybe when they could feel the stress in their bodies. And some examples that came up were taking tests, participating in class, talking to new people, etc. And I felt that students really seemed to enjoy and appreciate relating over these similar experiences. After this workshop, the grade 7 teacher approached me and told me that they were reading a novel called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon, which is a story about a boy on the autism spectrum and how he navigates his world. There was one student who asked me about autism spectrum disorder at the end of my presentation. And so this teacher invited me into his class to listen in, add my perspective and knowledge about the disability, and answer any questions that they had. And it was very cool to help the students understand the novel from a more psychological point of view, but also I really enjoyed hearing what conversations they were already having and what perspectives they had. Lastly, I received several topics for the oldest age group that I worked with, grade 8. And some of these topics were body image, social media addiction, and offensive jokes and comments about our racial identities. And after thinking a little bit on how I might be able to tie all of these topics together, which at first seemed like an impossible feat, I landed on the idea of self-perception and mental health, where we talked about, for example, how social media might affect body image or how microaggressions might affect how we feel about our racial identities. And I started off this conversation with a TED Talk called The Power of Self-Perception. And it was even fun asking the students how many of them had heard of a TED Talk and which ones they had seen. And this was a great way to break the ice. I would say that this workshop was by far the most challenging for me to execute. And if I had the chance to redo it, I would definitely change some things. When I broke the class up into smaller groups, they were quite chatty, but as you can imagine, when we came back together, they became very quiet. And this was definitely a moment where I had to think on my feet of better or easier ways to engage the students. And I ended up tossing all of my discussion questions out the window. When I asked one student how it felt, or when I asked all of the students how it felt to talk about mental health among their classmates, I admired when one student spoke up and said that it was actually extremely difficult. And we ended up just talking about more why that may be and what feelings were coming up for them. And this presentation was also particularly meaningful for me because I learned how classroom engagement can look like so many different things. And I think coming from a student perspective, we think it's just about how many times we're raising our hands and sharing out. But I learned through this process that it's really all of the stuff in between, even the awkward moments of silence, or the talking in small groups, or even the conversations that happen beyond the classroom. So I've thought about these two questions a lot since the end of my experience. How did Smith prepare me for this experience, and how did my experience impact my future goals? And I can point to specific Smith courses that I took that taught me key information and perspectives, to which I did my best to convey to these students, such as developmental psychopathology and abnormal psychology. More broadly, however, I think through past experiences at Smith, whether that be in-class presentations or participating in other panel presentations, Smith has helped me develop the confidence and courage and even ad-libbing abilities that were crucial to deliver these presentations and take on roles as a teacher and a leader and a facilitator. This experience has also enormously impacted opportunities that I've been exploring post-grad. And one thing that the students that I worked with taught me was that our narratives are vastly different and culturally dependent. And I want to keep exploring these core ideas of cross-cultural psychology as I pursue social work. So thank you all again for listening to my presentation and the rest of the panelists, especially my friends and family and mentors throughout my entire study abroad experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Anna, your incredible and meaningful experience. And I'll just remind anyone, while they have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll wait until all the presenters have gone and then ask your questions at the end. So next up, we have Khamar talking about her interior design internship. Aiko?
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Aigerim Khamar. I usually go as Aiko. I'm senior, majoring in architecture and urbanism, and I use she, her pronouns, and I will talk about my interior design internship. So for the agenda of my presentation, I want to talk about why this internship and what did I learn from my internship, and how this internship changed my academic and professional life goals. So after many attempts, failed attempts of getting internship in Handshake, in LinkedIn, I decided to get an internship in a local company, and I decided to create an internship on my own and to do what I wanted to do. And there are several reasons for what I chose a local company, because local companies are like, mostly they know Smith College and they know Smithies and how they how hardworking and how smart they are. So I thought I would have more opportunity to get hired as an intern in local companies. In terms of distance, I thought getting internship in the near to campus would be much easier for me during the summer. So I chose a local company. And this is kind of email that I sent to my supervisors, which is easier writing than a cover letter. So I just wanted to quickly go through how I created my internship. I introduced myself and I shared my intentions. I introduced Praxis, which is so great opportunity for students to get funded for the job that they wanted to do. And I shared what I want to do, is specific specific projects. And I will talk about this hook later. And that was the reason why I chose the local company. And just one sentence of my skills, and proposing some meeting time, and attaching my resume and portfolio, which is really important in design field. And the main part is my personal experience and what did I learn. So this is the company I interned. It's called Workroom Design Studio. It's located in Florence, and it's located in 20-minute walk. And these were the members of the studio, which is really small. Sally and Hannah are co-owners. So they were the main supervisors who were overlooking my job. And why this studio? So Hannah and Sally were managing 2 different design studios, and in 2018 they decided to merge their studios to deal with bigger projects. And these are just photos from their portfolio, which is really great, and I got excited to do interior design with them. And this is the hook that I talked about, why the studio. So Workroom Design Studio were responsible for the non-attack mill office renovation. And this is the factory that I learned from my landscape studies classes. And I thought it is really great that that's something I learned from Smith classes, that I can use it and I can see how this design studio just renovated interior design and made it usable to modern days. And my work included attending Zoom meetings. So I asked my supervisors to do my internship virtual, and which was like really great benefit for me creating my internship, so I can say my own requirements. Like I needed some remote internship and I got one. Checking the Slack, which was the main communication space. And I was working on 3D visualizations, so a lot of 3D renderings. And it included self-learning. There was no one who could do the tutorials or who could teach me. So I had to watch a lot of tutorials on my own and learn some new skills in editing them and be prepared to sudden changes, because it's in design field, it's usual thing for a customer to not like your design or you're doing something wrong. And I think it was pretty expected. So these are the renovation plans. These are the drawings that usually customer gets when they see the renovated plan. And if you don't have architecture background, I think it would be a bit hard to kind of imagine it or visualize it in real life. So these are the design collages that customers were getting. So this is the basic plan for renovation. It included tiles, wallpapers, and etc. And this is the work that I did. So if you can see the tile, and I included 2 different photos here. That's how I contributed most, because it is hard to see how the tiles are going to work, and it was my job to make a lot of options of the renovated design, so customer or my supervisors could pick one or just change their design proposal. And overall, I renovated or worked on visualization of 12 rooms, and I spent 220 hours of self-learning and doing the 3D visualizations. And overall, I handed 40 renderings to my supervisors and the customers. And I just wanted, I analyzed at the end of my internship how this internship helped me in my academic life. So in terms of strengths, I learned a lot with observations. So I was attending Zoom meetings, a lot of listening, and even though I was not the main voice, I learned a lot from my supervisors. And you organize your own progress and doing what you prefer. So I created my own timeline, but just following the deadline. Some weaknesses: you may supervise yourself. It needs some self-discipline. I was totally okay with it. My supervisor was so sweet. They didn't rush me. They didn't. And I worked on my own pace, which was really great. But it just needs some self-discipline. Opportunities. You may be doing a lot of self-learning, as I said. Site visits, so I got to see the Cambridge house that we did for our main project, and it was so exciting to see the before and after images of the same house, and getting excited about a particular thing for your future. So during my internship, I learned a lot about recycled materials, and that's something architecture is really fond of, the sustainability. So I ask a lot of questions about how construction materials are being recycled and how we can promote it to customers more. And the only thread I thought about myself is customer might like your design, which is better, but it is usual thing in design field. And what is next? How my internship changed my view. So I thought interior design is so underrated in design field. So I decided to go to graduate school in interior design. I want to research some eco-friendly recyclable building materials because I've never thought about it. This recyclable materials to be part of the sustainability. We usually think about alternative energy in architecture, but we don't talk much about the materials, building materials. So my internship helped me to understand that working interior design, it's much more interesting and fun for me. And possibility of getting hired in the same company. And I am in a close contact with my supervisors, and and I'm hoping to get back to my internship and do some full-time job there. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aiko. Incredible experience, hands-on experience. So next up, we have Sophie Jones speaking about their archival experience.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little sick right now, so just apologies for the sniffliness in advance. But I'm really excited to tell you all today about my experience this past summer in Italy, working in the Italian archives. So my name's Sophie. I'm a senior at Smith. I'm an art history major and an Italian minor and an archives concentrator. So this internship was actually pretty perfect for what I'm interested in, and I'm really focused in Renaissance and Baroque art. So I found this internship that I'm going to talk about through my former Italian professor, Professor Piana. He's no longer at Smith, but he was really amazing, and he let me know about this great opportunity. And it was because of my Italian minor that I think I really got to do this and understand it in a different way, because I knew so much Italian. So I was already in Italy because I was doing the Smith in Florence program for the spring. So that was pretty convenient. I was already in Florence, which is a beautiful city in Tuscany. But I was working at MAP, which stands for the Medici Archive Project. The Medici were this really important family from Renaissance Florence. They started out as these powerful bankers, and then kind of became almost like kings and queens just of this city-state. And so from around 1500 to 1800, they were really influential in the city, and especially which art was made in the city. They were patrons of the arts, and specifically well-known Renaissance painters. So the city of Florence still has all of their records from this time, and they are housed in this building called the Archivio di Stato, which is actually really close to MAP. It's like a 10-minute walk. And MAP is located in this old palace, which was really beautiful, Palazzo Alberti. So I got to go work there every day, which was really amazing. So their goal is to digitize and make more widely available all of the documents that are located in the Mediceo del Principato, which is the collection of the Medici documents. And so all of these documents are housed in this building that's close to MAP. But yeah, so they're a research institute, so the database isn't their only goal. They also provide funding for a lot of people who are interested in researching the Medici and kind of adding to the scholarly body of research that's being done on this family, which is just growing more and more every day. So I was working primarily with Sheila Barker, who is a professor at UPenn, but she also is an employee of MAP, who does a lot of work on female artists from the Renaissance and that time period. And so I was doing two things for her. So I'll talk about the first thing I did, which was located in the Archivio di Stato. And so I was looking for more information on this female artist named Lucrezia Quistelli, because not much information has been found about her up to this day. And so I actually just did some work looking through the finding aids, which was a little bit difficult because it's all in Italian and archives can be hard to navigate in English. So that was a new experience and that was a little challenging. And but I ended up finding this letter from Lucrezia Quistelli, which was really amazing. And I got to look at it and touch it with my own hands, which was just so cool. And as you can see, it's written in this kind of old Italian and cursive. So transcription can be a big difficulty when it comes to stuff this old. But with the help of Sheila, I was able to kind of learn how to transcribe this type of document, which was really, really helpful. And so there's about a mile's worth of documents just on the Medici in this building. And then there's all this other stuff on other families and other artists. So there's a lot to work through. But so I found a few things in there for Sheila and her research specifically. But I was also just working more generally on this map project that is to digitize all of the Avvisi, which are these collections of essentially news from the time. The Medici court would put out Avvisi to kind of let the other courts of Europe know what was going on and kind of update them on different courts and different politics of the time. So I was working to take photos of those, and we would just go in with our cell phones and take photos and then upload them to the database. So the other project that I was working on for Sheila was the Bronzini manuscript, which is a 32 tome collection, which is actually in the National Library of Florence. And this was a separate project from MAP, but still research for her. Excuse me. And again, we were just going in with our phones and taking photos. But this was a really interesting collection written at the end of the 1500s about the history of women and just women throughout history kind of doing remarkable things, not just artists, just women in general. And this is an example of a passage that I found about Roman women who cut off their hair to make rope to pull war machines. And I just thought this was amazing because at the time I had a shaved head, and so I just found this kind of point of connection from something that was 500 years old. So that was really an amazing moment for me. And despite the fact that it was so hard to read, I still found this kind of point of connection, which was super, super cool. So looking forward, I really just through this work kind of discovered the connection between archives and art history, which I think throughout my time at Smith, it was kind of hard for me to see the two as a combined practice. But really, I saw the importance of the research behind art history. And yeah, so just kind of finding out how important work in the archives is to doing research on artists and different patrons and artists and families that support the art. I also realized that I do really want to pursue a future in archives, and I'm looking into possibly getting my MLIS so I can continue working in the archives. And although this was more the research side of it, on the academic track, and an MLIS is more technical, I think I'd really just like to continue working in the archives in any way I can. And also working abroad was really interesting. I learned a lot about how that looks different in a foreign country. And I got to work with some really amazing women as well. I worked with women who are interested in all different kinds of Renaissance and medieval history. There was one girl who was doing work just on female composers. There was one girl doing work on female writers. So just so much work being added to kind of the collection of research on specifically women at this time, which, as we know, there's not a whole lot. So it was really cool to see that. And I was able to use Praxis for this project. It was an amazing opportunity, and I just feel really, really lucky that I had the Italian knowledge. I had the semester of abroad to kind of back me up, and I knew a lot because of being able to study abroad about the Renaissance. And so it was kind of just this point of these three areas coming together so that I could have this amazing experience and learn so much about archives and transcription. And yeah, I think that's it.
Incredible, Sophie. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And last but certainly not least, we have Jenna Sutherland. Jenna, take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So what does it look like to work under a contemporary art curator? Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm a senior and I'm a double major in studio art and government here at Smith. I was very fortunate to find out the answer to that question this past summer working as a curatorial intern for contemporary art at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, which has now materialized on the slide, so you can see it there. The Peabody Essex Museum, it's usually shortened to PEM, so it's less of a mouthful. It's a museum of art and culture with a vast collection of over 1.8 million works of art, ranges from local New England history to pieces from all around the world. And PEM really strives to create experiences that help broaden people's perspectives and knowledge about both themselves and the wider world. So my role as an intern was to support curator Lydia Peabody. She's the curator of contemporary art. 2 exhibitions opening at the museum this coming summer. Bethany Collins' America, a Hymnal will be opening this June, and Geoswaby Fresh Up will be opening in August. Bethany Collins' America, a Hymnal centers on artist Bethany Collins and her exploration of the possibilities of language and American identity. One of her pieces that will be featured in the exhibition is the artist book America, a Hymnal, which contains 100 different versions of the hymn America, also called My Country 'Tis of Thee, which is the name I was much more familiar with, written throughout American history. The lyrics in each version speak to different causes, including women's rights, which you can see in the picture there, temperance, abolition, even the Confederacy. The music notes in the hymns are burned away using like a laser. So the pages are really charred and they fall apart pretty easily. I had a very high pressure job during this internship of frequently handling the fragile hymnal, which I'll talk a little more about momentarily. So there's artist Bethany Collins and then a close-up of one of the pages in the hymnal. Geoswaby Fresh Up is a traveling exhibition. So it first opened in St. Petersburg, Florida. And as the title implies, it features the work of artist Geoswaby. Swaby is originally from the Bahamas, and she creates elaborate textile portraits with sewn line drawing and quilting techniques. Her vibrant portraits investigate the intersections of Blackness and womanhood, as well as exploring themes of sisterhood, identity, and confidence. The show's title, Fresh Up, is a Bahamian phrase often used as a way to compliment someone's style or their confident way of being. So here's Geoswaby at the opening of the exhibition when it opened in St. Petersburg in Florida, and some of her incredible pieces. My Hands Are Queen 4 is the one on the left, and Pretty Pretty 8 is the one on the right. So both of these incredible exhibitions showcase the work of living women artists of color and connect with current discourses around gender, race, identity. I felt that my Smith education and coursework in the art and government departments really prepared me for an internship demanding this base of knowledge about contemporary art and history. I really felt that my majors, as well as the historical and societal context I could learn about through taking advantage of the opportunities of a liberal arts education, let me think expansively about displaying contemporary art in the current moment. It was also very meaningful for me to transition from studying at Smith during the spring semester, a community where the achievements of women and other gender minorities are really celebrated, to then an internship that summer where I could support incredible art by women artists being shared with the world. So you can see my little photo of me on my lanyard working at my desk station. And at this point in the presentation, you might be wondering what I actually did as an intern. So one of my main responsibilities was to conduct contextual research, which I compiled into annotated bibliographies and notes documents. My research efforts into the histories of different versions of the song America, again, my country 'tis of thee, contained in the hymnal, culminated in me writing an essay on my findings to be published on the Penn blog in conjunction with the forthcoming exhibition this summer. Another major task I worked on during my internship was transcribing over 75 versions of America from the hymnal, which involved library archival research and art handling. I learned how to handle a fragile piece of art and how to look carefully at spelling, capitalization, and punctuation, and often pretty difficult to decipher texts in order to produce an accurate transcription. So in this picture here on the slide, you can see me doing some of the transcription work in the Phillips Library, which is part of the Peabody Essex Museum's Collection Center. And I'm preparing to turn one of those really fragile pages and hoping that it doesn't crumble in my hands. I also assisted with the creation of experience briefs. So those detail the big goals and key messages of each exhibition. And I also created exhibition design guiding maps, which lay out ideas and considerations of how to arrange art within an exhibit space. Finally, I was responsible for developing and managing object checklists and image files for all of the pieces in the exhibitions. This was a much more administrative role. In the Geo Swaby Fresh Up exhibition alone, there are over 40 pieces of art. So I did a lot of synthesizing and organizing information from multiple different sources. One of my biggest takeaways after working closely with my supervisor and attending lots and lots of meetings about these exhibitions was just how much goes on behind the scenes to make these exhibitions happen. Besides the curatorial aspect, many more departments of the museum are necessary to get these exhibitions up and running. Exhibition designers, project managers, exhibition text editors, and representatives from the marketing team were just a handful of the many people I encountered while working on these exhibitions. My career goals have not necessarily shifted from this. They have broadened as I've been introduced to other positions working in the museum field. This experience has made me more aware and open to other possible career paths that still focus on art and support museums. I feel that through this experience as well, I now have a broader network of connections for informational interviews or other resources to support the path that I choose. I also really appreciated the mentorship and support system involved with this internship. My supervisor, who I have a big thank you for, was amazing at helping me learn and inviting me to different museum opportunities and events for my professional development. I also had a cohort of interns, which again, super thankful for them, almost all of whom were in master's and PhD programs that I could talk to about their post-undergrad trajectory. I loved having people around me that I could talk to about my ideas and always felt that they really welcomed my contributions, even though I was just in this role of being an intern. This supportive workplace environment is definitely an important quality that I intend to look for in a future workplace. So as you can tell from that last little bit, I'm super thankful to have had this internship experience. I learned so much about contemporary art itself, museum operations, and other art-related career paths. A special thank you to my advisors at Smith for their guidance, my family, of course, for their support, my supervisor, Lydia Peabody, for really guiding me through this internship, the other interns in my cohort, which I just mentioned, and of course, the Lazar Center for having me here today, and for everyone for coming and listening to my presentation. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Jenna, and all panelists. I don't know about everyone here. I'm super inspired and I have a number of questions, and I encourage you all to put questions or comments in the chat. Before I forget, I did have a couple of people private message me to say, when can I or where can I see this recording or other Smith in the World recordings? They will be on our YouTube page, and we'll pop in the chat where to find the YouTube link. So we already have our first question, and this one is specifically for Anna. Anna, you seem to have covered a lot of different major topics of mental health in these young grade levels. And how were you able to gauge the quantity, how much to present to the students in relationship to their age level?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I would say it was definitely with the help of my supervisor and also working with the school teachers and communication that happened between them. Because it was really the students who were guiding these presentation topics. And so they came to my, either the students or the teachers came to my supervisor and said, hey, it would be really cool if Anna could talk about these things. And I think she would have a very different perspective than a teacher talking about these topics. And so I really couldn't have sort of gauged that alone. It was really the help of my supervisor and the teachers, and also a little bit of research on my end to figure out what's the best way to frame this topic to this certain age group. And sort of developmentally what might make most sense.
Great. I had a direct private message from a student, and this one is for ICO. And the student wants to know, how were you able to handle stressful clients in the interior design process?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, as I said, there was one customer who was a bit difficult to handle because we finished the design renovation. We prepared all the materials and finalized material supply. We already ordered the materials, and there was the case where customer was like, oh, I didn't like it. I want this room to be changed like totally. And that's the time where we had to rush and redo everything. So my supervisors handed me all the visual parts. So I did all the all the renderings, all the 2D drawings and everything. And my supervisors were the ones who were contacting material suppliers to change the order. So we would come up with an alternative version, but fitting into the budget. So we also were limited in terms of financials, in terms of money, and which material are we going to order? Are they available? And we just had to attend a lot of meetings and talk through a lot of it. And it was just a matter of like 2 days where we had to solve everything and redo it.
I'll chime in. I'm curious, for the students who were abroad for their internships, did you find that there was a language barrier? How did you navigate having to speak with people in another language? Did it affect your work?
Sophie,
Reading in another language, Sophie, in your case.
Yeah, I can talk a little about that. I found, well, most of the other interns and people that I was working with at MAP itself actually were from like either England or the US. So that wasn't too difficult, but working in the archives themselves, it was just hard to navigate, getting my access card and there was a lot of questions as to like why I was there and what type of research I was doing. But I found that like archivists in Italy were super nice and helpful, and reading the documents themselves was obviously hard because it's not the Italian that I've learned. It's a much older Italian, but that I think was really important because I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about Old Italian. But yeah, for the most part, it's definitely a different system they have in terms of getting access to the archives. And I know that here, like, there's just some like cultural differences too. Like, I know here a lot of the times you wear gloves when you're looking at old documents, but they didn't want us to wear gloves at all in Italy. They encouraged us not to. So just little things like that, like kind of just having kind of preconceived ideas here about what archival work is supposed to look like, and then it being a lot different in Italy. But in terms of the language barrier, it was definitely useful to have my conversational Italian that I had learned because of Smith and thanks to Smith. So.
Yeah, and I would say for my internship, it was definitely helpful that the school, almost everyone spoke English. But it was really fun talking with the French teacher, and I got some great language practice there. And I'd say one thing that did end up being difficult is just how much I was able to integrate myself sort of into the social aspect of the school. So like in the teacher's lounge, or parts of the internship where it was more of the socialization part, where most of the teachers were French speaking. And so it definitely took a lot of courage to sort of integrate myself with the other teachers, especially with that language barrier. And similar to what Sophie said, there were some pretty big cultural differences. So especially in this school, sort of just how the health and mental health system works in schools is very different. And so because most of the mental health and counseling support that comes is external, and people come into the school, but there's not really a built-in counseling department. And so that also provided me this opportunity in general to sort of help take on that new role.
And Anna, a question had come in. Would it be a different internship if it had happened in the USA?
Yeah, I think it would be different in a lot of ways. For example, the presentation that I had, which touched on race, I think would be completely different. And France has an entirely different relationship to racial identities, and also just how you talk about it. In general, it's not as talked about. And so there was definitely a dynamic of this being not just in France, but at an international school where people have, the perspectives are much, much wider on how you talk about mental health. And I think another way it would have been different is just the perspectives that I was hearing from the students. And so some of the stressors that I heard the students talk about, I think would be different, such as being away from home and learning French for the first time. And those very particular and unique experiences that I think wouldn't have been the same in the US.
I'm going to chime in with a question of my own, and it's really for all of the panelists. As you probably can imagine, the Lazarus Center is meeting with a lot of students lately. Everyone's looking for internships for this summer, and I think sometimes the best advice comes from those who have already gone through it and already had these successful experiences. So if you had a piece of advice for Smithies who are looking for internships now, what would you tell them?
I can chime in first quickly. So Emily and I had talked a lot about how this was a self-designed internship, and that sort of is a whole different way to sort of approach this process. And I would say to not be afraid to cold email and cold call, which is really how I got my internship in the first place. I just picked up the phone and I called the school and I said, you know, hi, my name is Anna Maffa. This is what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in your school. And I think it would be a cool fit if you're willing to have me. And it sort of set off a chain of events. And it's hard, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah, I can add on to what Anna just said. I think I showed up looking for like them to tell me what to do, sort of, and just kind of be ready to be the intern who like does exactly what they need me to do. But there was also a lot of room for doing research that I was interested in, and I think similarly to what Anna said, I think, you know, kind of showing up with stuff that you're interested in as well, and kind of guiding yourself. A lot of places that people will find work this summer, I think, will probably be looking for people who are really driven by their own interests, and looking for people who already have stuff that they're looking to dig further into. So yeah, just kind of using yourself as a guide for what you'd like to do, and your past research and everything.
Jenna, oh, go ahead, Jenna.
I was going to say I can speak to my internship being one that was like part of an internship program that was established at the museum that I had applied to, which is a little different from some of the self-designed experiences of my other panelists. And I think doing an internship search can often be sometimes demoralizing because you're sending in so many applications and just hoping for all these different possibilities. But even late into like the early summer, there are a lot of museums and places, you know, similar environments that are still looking for interns. So I know specifically at the Peabody Essex Museum, they were looking for interns in the late spring, which is different from many other places look much earlier. And there's just like, you have to have a little bit of persistence, even after things might not work out the way you expect them to continue looking for opportunities that might be a really good fit for what you're interested in doing.
I would just say going just to meet with any folks from Lazarus Center was really helpful for me, because at the beginning I was just a bit hesitant, you know, I was hesitant to like, why would I go there if I just need to apply? I have account in Handshake and LinkedIn, but I didn't know there are many options to get the internship, and I didn't know what I wanted to do for my internship. And I think after talking with Emily, I think I settled in, and I just decided to go into just not focusing on getting internship, but focusing on what I want to do for my internship. So in terms of that, just going for a Lazarus Center was really helpful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, if no one has any additional questions, this will conclude today's Smith in the World panel. We encourage you to sign up for the last panel next week, and we'll drop a link in the chat for how to do that. We want to thank you again to our wonderful panelists, and thank you for our audience for asking questions and being here for today. I hope you all enjoyed this session as much as we did. Have a wonderful day.